Hey guys, coming at you with another episode of the Filmaholic. Today I'm going to be talking about One Tree Hill. I'm doing a rewatch currently with my girlfriend, and I've decided to just do some videos commentating on it, giving my opinion about each episode, kind of just sharing my stories about visiting the sets, how much One Tree Hill means to me, how it's influenced my life, both as just a person, but also as a TV watcher, as a fan of screenwriting, how these stories affected me and how they shaped me when I'm looking at writing characters, writing storylines, especially for episodic storylines. So starting with, I'm going to talk about the first 3 episodes. That's what we've rewatched so far. Sometimes it might be multiple episodes like this. Sometimes it might be just breaking down bigger episodes and talking about those. But starting with, I'm going to start with the pilot, episode 101 of One Tree Hill. To me, this is my favorite pilot ever written. It's so self-contained if it needs to be. It's an underdog story, which I really enjoy through most sports tales. You look at Rocky, you look at other ones. But One Tree Hill goes beyond sports. But this, it's very sports-centric to basketball. It's a big part of the show, especially the first few seasons. But the pilot for One Tree Hill is just really special. It's very low budget, which you can tell when you get to future episodes. They get renewed for future for the rest of the season. The budget goes up. The quality of the film starts to look better. The pilot's very gritty looking at certain scenes, but I really enjoy it. I want to talk about a couple different things here. Obviously, I said I really enjoyed the script. It was simple. I liked the characters that Mark Schwann created. Mark Schwann is a whole different story. Obviously, he's not a very good guy, which was disappointing to hear, especially after I looked up to him as a writer for so many years, and to find out he's a creep in real life was very disappointing. But it is what it is. The show from day one starts to have memorable quotes, and it takes a lot of quotes from different books and whatnot and puts it in the show. But there's also obviously quotes that the characters come up with that stay throughout the show. I'll be seeing you, this one that happens in this episode, comes back later. It's very impactful once you know the story. Something I want to mention is they don't really make shows like this anymore, which is unfortunate and pretty upsetting to me, because I've always, especially growing up watching One Tree Hill, watching Dawson's Creek, watching other shows like that, I've always wanted to make a show like that. And I wrote a screenplay in high school, had a screenwriter help me with that. I read it for my senior project, and he told me that it felt like a show like Dawson's Creek, which really was a high praise for me. But I've kind of given up on that dream of making that show, because they just don't make shows like that anymore. People don't really watch those shows anymore. Hopefully, maybe one day that'll come back around. Right now, I feel like all people want to watch is more sci-fi oriented shows. You look at the CW now, which is what One Tree Hill ended up on. It started on the WB, the first 3 seasons, and then it merged. UPN and WB merged together to create the CW during its start of its 4th season. But you look at CW now, and everything on there is pretty much like a comic book show, or like Supernatural, or just something like that, or a comedy type show. You don't really focus on teen drama anymore, or even really drama in general, and real life stories like One Tree Hill I felt like did. Really like the sets on One Tree Hill. All the sets in the show are very memorable throughout the whole show, the course of the series. You get the River Court, which was an awesome place to visit. And if you ever get the chance to visit, if you're a fan of the show and you visit Wilmington, you have to go to where the River Court was. Unfortunately, they tore it down, which I'll talk about that later when we get to future episodes of stories behind that. But it's where the battleship at North Carolina is, overlooking the river. It's a beautiful spot, one of my favorite spots in the world. It's very peaceful there. I can definitely see why they chose that as a location. But you look at other sets too that are set up in the first episode. You got Karen's Cafe, you got the houses that recur throughout the show. Peyton's bedroom, obviously the school, Keith's garage, a lot of important things. The bridge in One Tree Hill is iconic. It's really cool. One thing I do want to mention is a lot of the stuff in the first episode is different than the later in the series, is because they filmed this before they actually got picked up. So when they got picked up, they changed some stuff. Lucas and Karen's house looks a little bit different. It was filmed at a different location. I think some of the shots in Karen's cafe was actually filmed across the street from where they ended up shooting Karen's cafe. It was shot at Port City Java across the street, at the corner of Front and Grace, I believe. And Whitey's office is different. If you watch the pilot, it looks, I don't know if it was filmed like at a real school or what the case was, but it's definitely a different office than he has later in the series. And also, obviously, a thing about the pilot that I also want to throw out there is Brooke's not there. I'm obviously surprised that she wasn't in the pilot. I think really the story behind that was originally she wasn't written in the show, and the studio read the first script and was like, why are all your characters so broody and depressing? We need to cheer the audience up. So Brooke was written to the show, and I'm glad she's there because she's one of the best characters of the show. So then we go on to episode 2, 102, the places you have come to fear the most. Obviously, in this episode, I was talking about how the budget increases, the film quality looks different, better picture, and from this point through, I think season 3, you can definitely tell it more in season 2 and season 3, but they start to use like a little tint on the filming. It gives it like a little orangish glow to make the cast look younger. Rewatching it, I've kind of forgotten how terrible Nathan was at the beginning. He's an awful dude. I'm really happy that he changes throughout the show. James Lafferty, as young as he was, that was really cool that he got cast in that role. Everyone just does so great with their role, especially in season 1. Paul Johansson, by the way, one of the most underrated actors to come from television. I wish he got more roles. If I get to make films one day, I want Paul Johansson in some movies. Just watching 102, watching these first 3 episodes, because it's been a little bit since I got around to rewatching One Tree Hill. It just makes me miss the show because, like I said, they don't make shows like this anymore, and I feel like ever since the show's been off, I've had like a little void as far as that goes. The show also gives you that sense of something to believe in, something to watch, something to root for, and that everything's going to be okay. Which is one of the interviews that I watched. They talked about that. It was like talking about how, you know, if they could make a show where people could watch it and they could feel okay for, you know, the 45 minutes that they watched it, then they were achieving their goal. And I think One Tree Hill accomplished that. Throughout, you kind of get it in the first episode, but as 1 and 2 kind of progress, you really get to see the sound, get to hear the soundtrack in the episodes, and how that's going to play a really important part throughout the show is the music, the soundtrack, obviously, but also you need to look at the episode titles. Every episode is named after a song or an album, which is really cool, I think. We move on to episode 3, Are You True? One little story that if you went on the tour of the Screen Gems when One Tree Hill was filming there, you probably know this, but a little trivia was that the scene where Lucas is taking a shower in the high school, and he ends up, you know, they take his clothes and he has to walk and everything. But when he was filming that scene, he actually had to stand in the kiddie pool, and they used a hose to wet him down. I think that was like a funny thing, little trivia. Which, that scene where you see him start walking through the school hallways, that I think, I'm not sure if you've seen it in the first couple of episodes, but that is definitely when they started building the actual set of the high school on the sound stages. They use repeatedly throughout the series after that. Once again, talking about the quotes, this episode introduces a couple like really amazing quotes that stick with the show. Obviously, the Nathan and Haley, don't say I never gave you anything. I really like the Dan quote, happiness doesn't come cheap. Hell, if it did, we'd all be smiling. just a lot of solid storylines too, like I mentioned, about giving people hope. A lot of storylines of struggle and overcoming your fears, and I think this episode really does well with that. You look at Peyton with her artwork, the storyline with her and Lucas, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you type story, with him coming back to play basketball, and I think that was in the second episode. Your art matters. The hazing, him getting through the hazing, it's just really important stuff that I think people can watch and get something from. Also really enjoyed the burning boat stuff in this episode, which comes back in season 9. I'm kind of surprised they didn't have it in more, another season, but kind of understand why they didn't. Really cool. Thought it was a good storyline, and I love the shot at the end of the episode with Lucas and Haley sitting on the bench at the river court and watching the burning boat in the distance across the river. Thought that was very cinematic, and they actually do a shot just like that in the final season with Haley and a different character, and I thought that told a lot about Haley's journey from season 1 to season 9. I also want to talk about the score a little bit. The score is not, it doesn't blow you away, but it's actually quite good. It's subtle, it's calming, and I think the composers did really well with what they were meant to do. I think the same composer did season 1 and 2, and then they had a different composer for 3 and 4. I found that online, doing some research. I'm not sure about the rest of the series. I'm gonna have to look into that, but yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the first 3 episodes. I'm really excited to start watching the rest of season 1. But if you're a fan of One Tree Hill, you want to do a rewatch, you want to watch some of these videos, you want to share your thoughts with me, that would be awesome. Talk about our favorite characters, favorite episodes. So far, overall, my favorite character of the series is Dan. My favorite character of season 1, though, is Peyton. If you look at these first couple episodes, Lucas is a really good character. I really like him. He does some questionable stuff later in the season, obviously, that makes me not put him up there, and then we'll get into the other stuff later. Not a whole lot to talk about as far as storylines, so far with these first 3 episodes, just really setting stuff up. But as we get into more episodes, I'll give some more heavier thoughts. But thank you guys for listening.